The significant backlog of undocumented people in the country is not a consequence of border crossings. Trump seems to be admitting that there's going to be, quote, growing pains. The richest man on earth, someone who is only recently an American citizen, spending almost $300 million to buy an election.
Let's hop into a Piers Morgan panel, a pretty spicy one at that, with lefty Briahna Joy Gray on with Dave Rubin debating Donald Trump and his agenda. So be sure to take a second, hit the like button, helps us grow a bunch, helps the video get out there, and let's hop right in.
I think this conversation is exactly why we need a workers' party in this country. You opened, Piers, by mentioning that Trump seems to be admitting that there's going to be, quote, growing pains. It's not just an admission. Republicans have been telegraphing this and pointing specifically to Milei in Argentina as an example of the economic policy they want to pursue. This is not an accident, nor is it a consequence of inheriting Biden's economy, which I have no interest whatsoever to defend. But it is worth noting that Donald Trump is implementing an agenda that is purposefully throwing the country, if not into recession, then toward it. Because we have to ask ourselves the question of who he represents and who he is working for.
MAGA is trying to almost one-to-one replicate the disaster in Argentina, with Elon even brandishing a chainsaw, where that is what the methods there that have been used have been labeled as chainsaw cuts, with also reckless spending to their social programs under the far-right libertarian leader, where the poverty rate has doubled to over 50%, the highest there in 20 years, with unemployment growing, rent and utility prices growing, energy prices going, sales dropping, and an economic disaster born almost entirely on the middle and low class, where Trump now has his cabinet full of billionaires with policies for billionaires, as he's already saying he can't lower prices, and admits that there will be a down period. You can see the almost one-to-one relations here and the failures of these small government libertarian cut spending policies, despite Trump running on economic relief on day one.
What I welcome as an American is upholding the law, our immigration system, and a path to citizenship. The significant backlog of undocumented people in the country is not a consequence of border crossings, which, yes, of course, do spike in valley and did have a spike under the Biden administration, which is now more in a valley, in part because of Trump's policies. Of course, that is the case, but we also need to look forward to whether or not the Trump administration is going to handle the millions of Americans who are waiting for a path towards citizenship. And that incentivizes those long waits, incentivizes people taking illegal means. But this is the fundamental question that I know it's very awkward for people to ask themselves, because many of the very affluent people on this panel are implicated by it. Whose policy agenda is Trump pursuing when at inauguration he is backed by 3 billionaires? Elon Musk, Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg.
She is spot on here again. The problem with immigration isn't an invasion on our southern border. It's with asylum. Claims get backed up, visas expire and take forever to renew. The system is set up in a way that not only incentivizes, but allows for people in the asylum system to slip through the cracks. It's not this massive flood over the border that Trump sells it to be so he can build his wall and whatever because he thought that was good to run on and now just doesn't want to ditch it, and even though he's largely failed to do it. And this is why Trump has no real solutions to fix what problems do exist in immigration. Only leftists, and kind of to some extent the Democratic Party really does. Trump is wiping away temporary protected status from Haitians and Venezuelans, which will only create more undocumented immigrants who are already in this country. And good luck rounding them all up and deporting them. What do you think is going to happen then? But notice how the guy who is backed by billionaires still supports keeping the H-1B visa immigration so billionaires can continue outsourcing cheap slave labor from other countries. Because again, and you can't overstress this administration is for the top 10%, by the top 10%, and could care less about the common worker.
I have an ideological problem with the idea that a billionaire, the richest man on earth, someone who is only recently an American citizen, spending almost $300 million to buy an election and advance his agenda, standing in front of the cabinet, as though he is the president of the United States of America, and pushing policies like a tax cut that would raise taxes on the lower 50% of Americans, while making a tax cut for the top 1%. When you have the very top 1%, fraction of 1%, standing in the room and advancing these policies, I think it's worth it for the American people to ask why the egg price conversation is talked about as though it's a footnote, why we're not talking about soaring housing costs, why nobody can afford the cost of education, why nobody can afford healthy food for their family, why nobody can afford car repairs, and why somebody like an independent Senator Bernie Sanders was going around the country talking about those things, turning out huge crowds in red districts that Donald Trump won.
She ate so hard here. It's really easy to put in perspective by just being honest about the numbers, right? In Trump's last tax cuts, the average middle class household got between $400 and $900 for the whole year back. So as little as a month of rent, maybe not even that, to a month of rent and groceries, or just a month of rent, depending on where you live. And this is all the tax cuts will be for the middle class. Again, the no tax on tips, overtime, Social Security literally can't fit in the budget they passed for the tax cuts. So all a lie. We already know this. Meanwhile, education prices skyrocketing up, housing prices skyrocketing up, Republicans cutting $880 billion from Medicaid. So you'll have to start caring for your grandparents. Something like 80 to 90% of long-term care, nursing homes are covered by Medicaid. They've been trying 41% of births are covered by Medicaid. They've been trying to cut Social Security for decades. They're already talking about reducing 10% of the workforce there. You'll have to pay for your parents and grandparents then to retire. Healthcare premiums are going up. Medicine costs are going up. Food prices are still going up, and they're saying they can't do anything about them. Yet Trump has literally no solutions for any of this. If anything, he wants to make it worse for you because he stands on the side that profits from when it gets worse from you. Because his focus instead is on the tax cuts. The tax cuts that, again, are going to get you at most $900 extra. Good luck sending your kids to private school when he destroys the Department of Education for an entire year on $900 extra.